during today's call, please feel free to use a chat function in Zoom to send in questions as soon as you think of them, and we'll definitely look to address them toward at the end if we haven't been able to earlier on the call. So thank you all for joining, and I'm really grateful to pass on to Nicola Mathers.
Thank you very much, Michael. I can't see your screen. I don't know whether you are screen sharing and the slides. I don't know if it's just me. There we go. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, everyone. And as Michael says, really pleased that you're here to join us this afternoon to hear more about the emerging talent. I just wanted to say just a very quick few words because it's a project that's very, very close to my heart. And it really started about 3 years ago with a conversation with the late Steve Douglas and our frustration, which I'm sure everyone on this call would share in the lack of diversity at senior levels in the housing and regeneration sectors. And given what we do as jobs, like our industry should be much more representative of the communities that we're working for and we're serving. And we were thinking about how can we attract diverse talent into housing and regeneration? How can we then fast track those talented individuals and give them really clear career trajectories and make sure that we retain them in the sector? So after doing sort of about 2 years of soft market testing, and Patrick, who you're going to be hearing from, was very much part of that sort of creative process, we came and developed the Emerging Talent Programme that you're going to hear more about in a bit. And this is really about, and not wanting to sort of give it away, but giving people the opportunity to have that public-private sector experience, which I think gives people a real advantage in our sector. It's about giving the training and the support to people so that they're really clear about what the career options are available, and they're equipped with all the skills and the confidence to be able to do amazing things in our sector, and also having that variety of placements and seeing all the different roles that were available for people, and really trying to kind of do a bit of myth busting in terms of what housing and regeneration as an industry does. And so we came up with this concept of the Emerging Talent Programme, and then I handed it over to Michael, and he's just done such an amazing job in turning that into reality. And at that point, I think I'll hand over to Michael and let him tell you about the Emerging Talent Programme. So over to you, Michael.
Thank you very much, Nicola. So building on what Nicola said, what are the goals of the programme? To bring in ethnically diverse talent into our sector, but to give them an experience that's unique and will retain them in the sector, but also give the sector a talent pool that has got a unique set of experiences. And what already we've been experiencing with the first cohort, and Patrick and other colleagues have been part of that, is collaboration and learning on this topic. You know, diversity inclusion isn't something that can be improved and achieved without real collaboration across all parts of our sector, whether it's different employers and everyone else that's involved in the space. Just one point I want to make, the pictures you're going to see, the vast majority are of the first cohort, and Nick and I have kind of been really grateful for the opportunity we've had to work with them and see them getting involved in stuff we're doing. And so everyone you see is actually on the programme, which is great to see, and great to be able to show them off, to be honest with you. So the talent pool that the programme is working to bring in, and is very much shown by the first cohort. Deliberately, we're looking to bring people in at the start of their career, and specifically we're looking for recent graduates, but also people who may not have a university degree but have a similar level of life or work experience. The programme isn't appropriate for school leavers, but absolutely for people that start their career who've either finished tertiary education or have had some life experience since finishing secondary education. All of the recruits have been assessed through the recruitment process on their behaviours, their intrinsic interpersonal skills and their levels of self-motivation. We were looking for that clear interest in the sector, but we weren't looking to narrow that field by focusing or only looking for people who'd had specific qualifications or specific industry work experience. If we had done that, we wouldn't have found diversity, certainly ethnic diversity in London's entry-level talent pool. What we're offering to the recruits is 15 months of paid employment at sort of 25 to 27k a year salary, but that will be primarily all of that time we spent completing two secondments in two different host organisations in our sector to get that diversity experience that Nicola described. They will get the insight into professional careers. We're looking for them to see what professionals and managers do and to get experience working in that role. So we support the two placements with cohort specific training days where they come together as a group to learn from other professionals in the sector, but also we've been supporting the first cohort with developing key professional behaviours. They each have a mentor, and we're grateful for the support of volunteers from the alumni network of Future London's Future London Leads programme. And then to ensure the strong impact and ongoing legacy of the programme, as they come into their final placement, Future London, my focus will be on working with them as individuals and with all of our network of employers to help them identify and secure permanent roles to progress to after programme as the platform for a successful career. What are employers getting who support the programme by hosting placements? In the short term, you're getting people who are talented. Regardless of their ethnic background, they've all got to jump through a fairly structured recruitment process to get on the programme. It's really important, and from my experience in managing early careers for 17 years in large organisations, the critically important to line managers, and Future London want to be there alongside those line managers, helping them, being on the end of the phone, but also being proactive in contact with them, to give them guidance and experience, but also to encourage them to talk about any challenges around any aspect of what they're doing, especially anything that's oriented around the underrepresented characteristics of the recruits in the programme. We're very, very keen that our host employers are looking at the people who come and do placements and thinking and hopefully wanting them to come back to their organisation, and being quite overt in saying to someone at the end of their placement, come back to us when they finish your programme. We want that to happen. And then also, as an organisation, you're going to get to build a network of other employees who've got that like-minded view of wanting to address the lack of ethnic diversity and building those wider relationships on that space. I'm not going to go into detail of kind of this slide, which demonstrates kind of who's doing what in our Future London or host organisations, but it's about providing the best experience for the crew, but also Future London are really passionate that managers and those organisations are getting value. They're getting success, they're getting great contributions in the short term, but also learnings that they can put into place in their organisation, with other colleagues further down the line. But Future London absolutely want to be there to partner and support. We're not necessarily here to replace HR teams, talent development teams. We know there's some great work that your teams do, or your organisations have teams doing for you. But in the context of the programme, we're there to support the success. And practically speaking, that's me on the end of the phone, having three-way meetings at regular milestones, just to support, guide, and listen, so we can keep improving the experience of both employers and the recruits during and after the programme. There is a cost we ask employers to contribute to, and that's paying us a monthly fee of £3,200 a month for each month of the programme. That's the only financial spend. There is no requirement for host organisations to pay the recruits. So the salaries are paid by Future London to those recruits. We are their legal employer. So outside of the monthly payment, host organisations don't have to pay for recruitment, because we will centrally manage and deliver the recruitment process. There's no spend on salaries, no spend on employers' national insurance or pension contributions, and in a good number of organisations, there's the spend on additional employee benefits. While we actually want the experience for each recruit on placement to feel part of that organisation, they're not going to be a legal employee or need to be a legal employee of the organisation. It works almost on a secondment basis. Alongside Patrick and colleagues at Southern Housing, we've been fantastically supportive with a real diversity of stature of organisations who've been involved in our first cohort, and a number have also signed up to our second cohort. For others, it's a challenge to make too much recruitment of two recruits and 2 lots of monthly fee at any one time. But the success we've had with the programme since we started the first cohort in January is absolutely due to the support of the cross-sector of London's built environment sector that you've got on the screen. What we learned so far, it's been successful. We were able to achieve a group that is diverse in a number of characteristics, and clearly ethnicity was the priority. But an absolutely fantastic result from the recruitment process, that 80% are female and 70% have been educated in non-selective state secondary schools. And with the 30%, the majority were educated outside of the UK at secondary school level, rather than having attended, independent schools in the UK. We been evaluating the program, and we did ask our managers and the recruits to do an online anonymous survey at the 3-month stage. Great indication of feedback from 100% of the managers said they're positive, and they're very positive about their experience and looking forward to the next placement. And interestingly, in terms of that immediate return on investment, just under 60% of recruits were thinking, yeah, this organisation could be somewhere I come back to and start my career. The thing that I've been really proud of is that peer network. I know there's a WhatsApp group that's pretty busy that the cohort have, and what you've got on the screen is one of our cohort was on placement with the Meridian Water team at London Borough of Enfield, and through her own initiative and liaison with the team, she hosted a site visit we went and did a couple of weeks ago. Unfortunately, just as the weather turned, so you noticed that in early October everyone's wearing coats, but it was a great experience. And I know there's other things that the cohort do with each other in terms of their professional and personal development. So thanks for listening to my bit. I'm really grateful to welcome Patrick to talk about the experience from Southern Housing Society. Thank you, Patrick.
Thanks, Michael. Sorry, I was struggling to unmute myself there for some reason. Michael sent me some questions to sort of reflect on. I was just reflecting on that stat actually, that only 59% of the cohort wanted to stay at their current employer. So I'll be quizzing Fahad at his leaving do tonight about which way he voted. But I hope he would say that he would love to come back to Southern, and we would love to have him back at the end of the programme at the appropriate time. I know it's a sore point for Michael. So I thought I'd just go through some thoughts based on some of the questions that Michael asked to give you a bit more perspective from sort of the host organisation at Southern. And the first obvious question was, why did we want to be involved in the first place? And I suppose if you look at me rather than the slide, you can see one of the main reasons we wanted to be involved, and that isn't because I am and was a passionate advocate of the programme, which naturally is the case, but because of what ultimately I represent. The diversity in Southern at senior leadership level is very monocultural. Our diversity at board and senior management level is 90% white on the board, 100% white on our executive. And Southern's currently going through a merger with Octavo, and the new designate executive is also 100% white. Now, we know that's not good, and not just because of what it represents as an image for the company, for the lack of role models for staff and applicants, and for many of our residents that might feel alienated by it, but we want to be more representative of our resident base, and yet we don't even really have good enough data to know with any certainty the sort of diversity that exists amongst our customers, because it's not something we capture as part of our day-to-day. And we know that subconsciously it affects decision-making, and it can stifle diversity of thoughts and opinion on strategic decision-making. We want to have a more diverse voice at our key forums, and we know organisations make better decisions when there are diverse backgrounds and viewpoints represented. We know there are opinions and challenges we're currently missing out on because of the similarity in the makeup of our leaders, and that also makes it hard for us to change and to innovate. We want to improve and we want to tackle unconscious bias, but it's hard to do that from the inside. And I say that with an honest perspective on it. And we've been involved in several well-intentioned programmes before that were largely designed to be by well-meaning senior white leaders in the sector, and typically focused on existing staff from more diverse backgrounds to help them break through some of the perceived barriers to more senior positions. These were definitely important for increasing visibility and offering more role models for the future, but there wasn't anything out there that we were doing to promote new diverse talent into the sector and to increase overall numbers and start shifting the dial on the percentages overall. So lots of those other programmes have actually more or less failed, as far as I'm concerned, to deliver the intended outcomes, because they seem to be prepared pretty hastily in response to George Floyd's murder, and then lack the resourcing and the fulfilling support necessary to help candidates through that process. And Michael asked me to reflect on what our experience in Future London has been like, and I could say that this Emerging Talent Programme has been fundamentally different to those other programmes that we've been involved in. Ultimately, it's an externally supported programme but from out of sector, a related part to the sector, but outside of the kind of housing association universe. And it's built on a very strong track record of promoting talent and personal development through the Future London Leaders programme that Southern has been subscribed to for years, and many of the other G15 and local authorities in the GLA subscribe to. And we've previously seen the tangible difference that that's made to staff who've attended those programmes over the past few years, and the reflection it's prompted within the broader team and the wider outlook that they've got, the greater diversity of thought that it's brought even from people that were already working for us. And whilst the steering group that I was on, that was led by Nicola, was critical in getting the momentum going, ultimately Michael has been the real critical key to the success. I don't want to embarrass him, but he has brought real insight and experience from his time at Mason elsewhere. He's been able to spend real time planning out a very engaging programme and investing in the candidates' development from day one, from the point where they've been recruited in, and making sure the right people with the right mindset and skills have come on board. And that's, I think, flowed through into the success that we've seen. And there have been real benefits to us from hosting a recruit. It's been a brilliant experience with Fahad so far, both for the team, the opportunities it's given to him, but also team members' opportunity to experience line management for the first time and to provide valuable feedback, well, for Fahad to provide valuable feedback to the team on what he's learned on the programme and his experience at working at Southern and the views on how we're doing as an organisation. As I say, we're very sad to see him go. It's his leaving day this evening, but we are looking forward to our next placement, Israel, who will bring a different perspective again, I hope, and certainly one from having done his first placement elsewhere at Camden. I see there's someone from Camden on the call, so maybe you can give me the inside line on him in a bit. And the last question Michael asked was, why are we committing to the second cohort? And it's quite a short answer, really, which is the need hasn't changed. One cohort, one placement without a permanent offer of employment from us isn't going to make the difference. So, this is something we need to stay committed to until there has been tangible change. And that may be an indefinite thing. But there has been tangible benefits to us from hosting those placements that I can point to. And so, it's a great thing for us to stay involved with. I hope that gives you a sort of an outline of what our experience has been today and what our views are on the programme and why it's so fundamental. But if you've got questions, however prosaic or more kind of strategic, just do ask away, because it's been very fulfilling for us, and I hope for Fahad as well. But we'll get his feedback in the next few days, I'm sure.
Patrick, thank you so much. Really, really grateful for your perspective, but I think it's really important to hear from two of our recruits. So huge thank you to Kazema and Beva, who are just going to quickly talk about their experience so far, but also a bit about kind of where they were before the programme. So Kazema, I invite you to share. Thank you.
Hi, hi everyone. Yes, I'll give a bit of a background introduction to myself. I grew up in Walthamstow, and I think I've always had a love for the built environment and architecture, especially having the William Morris Gallery so close to my home and having like weekly visits. And growing up in Walthamstow, I saw the change that was happening in the environment. It went from very underused, but there was still a lot of community, a really tight-knit community, and now you can see the change in the development, in the landscape, in the change of the types of buildings that are now up and coming there. And this influenced me to study interior architecture at university. I chose interior architecture because I thought, okay, I'm going to have a career in London, and I want to have a kind of researchy but very hands-on type of course. I want to study, but I also want to be quite hands-on. And I found that interior architecture was a good balance of learning about the built environment, but also having practical responses to any issues, any problems. And London has so many buildings that are, underused or not in the best quality, and adapting them and upgrading them to the 21st century is something that I really look forward to doing. And I graduated in March 2020, which was at the height, sorry, May 2020, which was at the height of COVID. And it was really difficult, actually. I was unemployed for about a year before I found my first role. And my first role ended up being a Kickstarter role. So that's like a 6-month program to help young people get a job, and it's part-time. And through that job, I was able to network, meet people from the council. And there was this lady from Walthamstow Council, Waltham Forest Council, my hometown, and she told me about the program, and I was like, no way, this does not exist. And I applied for it. You know, like Michael said, it's a very rigorous process, but like I'm thankful that I'm here. And I chose the HTV program because it focused on, you know, having people from ethnic backgrounds, from minority backgrounds, and allowing them to have the experience, because that was what I was lacking. The people that I was competing for roles with didn't have the had the experience, whereas I didn't. So being able to have 3 different experiences in 2 years, and then being able to find a long-term job, maybe at one of the companies that I was at, was really something that interested me. So my first role was at Sanctuary. So I've been doing 2 roles essentially every week. I spend a portion of my time in the housing officer role, where I had a bit of training in the programs and processes, and now I manage a patch of about 500 units, and that's a lot of people and a lot of complaints and a lot of issues. But learning how to deal with people face to face, about recognizing standards, about understanding the importance of a home to tenants firsthand. You know, you appreciate your own home, but seeing people whose homes aren't up to the standard that they wish they can be, and understanding that they don't have the means to make them the standard that they want, it was really eye-opening, and I think will really stick with me for the rest of my career. I also spent a portion of my time in the commercial assets redevelopment team, and this was great. This was really close to what I studied at university. So I visited multiple sites across London, but also across the UK. And they were usually void sites, so there was no use for them. But sitting empty is just a waste of time, waste of money, and could really be used by the communities that they were surrounded by. So we'd carry out surveys, take pictures, compile reports, and these reports actually went out to the higher ups in the teams, like the finance advisors, the director of housing, and they would review them, see if it was financially viable, and then proceed with the projects if they were. And this worked within the REBA stages, the 0 to 3. And then I also submitted a planning application. So that's been going really well. My second placement is at Camden Council. I'll be in the urban design or the regeneration and place team. I'm really looking forward to starting that in 2 weeks, well, in a week now, basically a week and a day, technically. But it would be nice to be on the other side of the planning team, to see how. So there was a bit of issue with my planning application, where some of the documents weren't rightly labeled, and it'll be interesting to be on the other side, seeing documents that aren't rightly labeled and being able to tell people, oh, you need to sort this out, and then send them back to me. So that'll be fun. And the program has been really great for me. I really enjoy the peer network that we have. The first cohort that's like formed together, we have that, like Michael was saying, that group chat, and that goes on. Like every time there's an issue, someone will say, oh, my manager, like this happened, how do you guys think I should respond to it? And other people would talk about, oh, so why did that make you feel bad, what happened, maybe think about it from this point of view. And it's really, really nice to have that joint experience with the rest of the team. And it's nice to see them in person at every cohort meetup day, training day. And we recently went out for a dinner, which was really nice as well. Yeah, we also have a mentoring scheme, and it's really nice to network through that way. We have one-to-one conversations with someone who's had the experience that you are now having, and asking them, how do I navigate
I'm not sure if everyone's lost because they were as I have. So apologies for that, but hopefully she'll come back on, but we'll take the opportunity to let Bebert speak. Thank you, Bebert.
Hello, hi everyone. Hopefully you can hear me and see me as well. So yeah, my name is Bebert. It's a pleasure to be speaking to all of you on what could be a really exciting opportunity for your organizations. So we'll start off. We'll just start off with a bit about my background. So I grew up in South London. So I think you can see the picture on the right. I think I grew up within those blocks in Stockwell, even though I was born in Croydon. And I think my experience living in those blocks were essentially probably, you know, one of the first or the early sort of interest that I had in the built environment. So I lived on a road called Wandsworth Road, which is it's in the middle between 4 different areas. So between Vauxhall, Stockwell, Clapham, and an area that we now know as Nine Elms. Sorry. And at the time, what I really noticed is, I don't know if anybody knows anything about Stockwell, but it was at the time one of the most socially disadvantaged areas in South London. And what I would notice is going into school, you know, the contrast between the different areas, the contrast between, you know, the Stockwell side and going into the Vauxhall side, and seeing, you know, a lot of areas being regenerated, a lot of new buildings popping out, a lot of exciting developments. And I think, you know, from a young age, those questions sort of, you know, popped in my mind. Why is that so, you know, why is there that sort of contrast? And I think that's probably why, you know, that interest in the built environment sort of grew within me. But I think, you know, growing up, I grew with a stronger, you know, interest in politics. And, you know, I've been involved with a lot of youth forums, as I mentioned, with the UK Youth Parliament and my local youth councils. For those who don't know how youth councils function, so they're sort of like forums that are, you know, organized by councils to sort of get youth or young people more involved in politics. Not all councils have a youth council, but some run by the Youth Mayor scheme. And, you know, it's just initiatives to get youth involved in politics. You know, we don't have any power, but we definitely do have a lot of meetings where we meet, you know, very influential leaders. But yeah, that was in the past. And I studied politics at Portsmouth, and then I went on to do a master's at the University of Sheffield. I've had a lot of work experience within the sort of political sort of, I guess you can say, arena. I've shadowed a lot of MPs. So I've shadowed Michael Ellis, who, you know, I think he was paymaster, secretary, or some sort of role that he has now. Bob Stewart, who is my local MP, and Joe Johnson, who's the brother of our previous Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. It's quite hard to sort of, you know, keep up to date with how many prime ministers we have. But yeah, I think I joined the ETP program because I wanted a bit of change from my previous experience within politics and to go into a sector which I knew would still be beneficial to people and still make a change to ordinary people's lives. Going on to my first placement. So my first placement is with Quad, which is a planning consultancy, which is based in the private sector. I've had the opportunity to, you know, be involved very practically in a lot of what Quad does and actually be part of the team. I've had site visits with clients, and you know, I've been able to work on a range of different projects. One of the projects that I've worked with quite closely is the Millwall FC training ground, which the planning application was submitted, I think, in April. And, you know, I had really hands-on experience, you know, learning more about the planning sector, which is a sector which, you know, I haven't really been involved with previously. So learning more about how regeneration actually happens in, you know, in a real life setting. And yeah, so I've also been able to do a range of work. I had the opportunity to formulate a letter to the GLA and communicate with a lot of other important sort of key stakeholders within the planning process, and being able to engage with them, attend meetings. And it's been a really great experience. And I think from my placement with Quad, I've really sort of, you know, enjoyed a really great attachment with planning. I really liked, you know, the concepts. I really like working within the sector. which is probably something that I would have imagined before. And going on to my second placement. So my second placement, which I'll be joining in 1 week and a half, 1 week and 1 day, will be Campbell Tickell, which is, I think, a management-based sort of housing consultancy, but they are not just a management consultancy. They also have a recruitment sort of side to the business, and they sort of interlink to each other. So yeah, I'm looking very forward to my experience there. So the benefits of the E2P so far, I would say probably firstly the leadership. You know, I'm not just saying this because Michael's right here in front of me, but Michael's really run the program really well. He's really given us the support, the great advice to sort of, you know, do well in our role and to sort of, you know, extend on our skills, going beyond just, you know, your role and going beyond and, you know, outperforming what is expected of you. But also there's been a great support from my colleagues at Quad and the cohort. So as Kazima said, we have our group chat, which, you know, is really good. And I think as Michael's mentioned, it's really important to have that support network, as you'll probably, you know, it'll definitely be helpful in the long term when we look into securing our permanent roles. So yeah, so that's part of the networking opportunities. Also being able to access and attend a lot of Future of London events. I think I missed the conference on affordable housing, but you know, that's just one of the examples of the many events that Future of London does and how that could sort of be beneficial to our own learning and also engaging with the sector as well, using obviously the Future of London's reputation and you know, the sort of networks that they have built already. And yes, and also being able to contribute more to diversity in the sector, you know, understanding that there is a lack of people who look like myself in the sector, but also being able to, you know, represent the program and be an ambassador for, you know, other people to join and being, you know, participate within the cohort. And obviously you know, having that security of having, I said 21 months, but it's going to be 15 months of employment throughout the program. So yeah.
Thanks, Bebert. Thanks, Kazima. So just to kind of wrap up before we open questions, the timeline that we're working to for our second cohort is kind of on the screen. I think the key thing is, I think one of the questions in the chat, we are going to be opening for applications, you know, hopefully by the 1st of November, and that will be via our website, but we're going to do a lot of activity around engaging with some job boards, as well as some that are targeted to people of ethnic minority backgrounds. And we have relationships with some of London's large built environment faculties at universities. And that's how we attracted our applicants from last year, as well as through Future London's network. And then essentially Future London, we will manage that central recruitment process, but we were supported by Patrick and other colleagues in the latter stage of the selection process in a collegiate effort, which is great to see colleagues coming together to select the talent for the programme. And then we'll be looking to get things organised for them to start work in mid-April, with our first sort of, you know, asking our host to pay the first fee in March, so we can cover the payroll to the first intake at the end of April. Keen to, you know, you've all been very patient. I know a couple of questions have come through. I'm probably going to start with maybe a question that have come through on the chat, and then just with Nicola and Tara's support, go through any others. And please feel free to address the questions to any of us who've been talking so far. Kimberly, you asked about how recruits will find out and join the program. So that's kind of, as I just said, we're going to advertise it through the Future London website and our comms channels. And also we know a lot of our hosts support it by putting the message out through their channels as well, and we'll be advertising on various job boards, but the focus will be to come to our website to get information on the application process and go from there. The questions coming about, can placements be in London or can they be outside in the home counties? To be clear, I think given the geography of our recruits, as well as the fact that they won't necessarily have the means to travel to locations that are either an expensive commute or aren't accessible through public transport, we would recommend that the placements are as central to London as possible, allowing for recruits from all around the capital to have, you know, relatively straightforward access. We know it's been a challenge for some of our recruits where some of the placements have been in cohort 1. So I'm just going to check if there's any other questions that people are happy to ask coming off chat, or if Nick or Tara want to share from our chat function on the chat. So I think it's a timescale for organisations to register interest. So I'll be following up with everyone who's joined the call. Sooner the better, in all honesty, but we appreciate some of these discussions will require time to take internally. We are going to go ahead with opening for applications. We do have some hosts who are supporting, committed to support second cohort, but we'll be looking to hopefully get more confirmation, ideally by the middle to the end of November, so we can work with those organisations to really effectively plan for an effective landing of the recruits in April, but also to get involvement and have people support the selection process. Question about how do we define roles in housing and regeneration? For example, in structural engineering, the key challenge is that we would ask that people are open to give placements to people who don't have a specific academic background or set of work experience, because ultimately that narrows the candidate pool straight away, especially in terms of protected characteristics. So the recommendation is these are placements in teams where they can learn about professional roles that they could progress to without necessarily having to go back and study for a formal university level qualification. I think there's a question about, excuse me. Yep, we're going to be sending a copy of the slides to everyone who's been on the call, as well as a recording. Conscious that recording might need a bit of WeTransfer tech, because from memory of Zoom calls, they're quite large bit of space, but definitely the slides today will be sent to everyone who registered to attend today's event. And have I missed any questions? I don't think I have, but if anyone's happy to send some more in or come off mute, please let me know.
Yeah, if you don't mind if I jump in.
Please.
Yeah, firstly, thanks for all that info, and both of your presentations were really impressive. I mean, firstly, Berbert's list of experience is considerably longer than mine, so I'm quite impressed with that, honestly. Wow. My question, Michael, was about, do you sort of specifically look to try and match up the placement, the cohorts with the placements in terms of like interest or experience or anything like that, or is it sort of a bit more random?
It's a brilliant question, and I think the way we did it has changed over the course of the first cohort. So with the first allocation to the first placement, where we knew the recruits through the recruitment process, and we got to know a bit about them, we didn't know everything about them, but we deliberately and Patrick and other colleagues really did look to offer us placements that had flexibility to take, anyone could have a go at it and do a good job if they have the right approach and attitude rather than a technical background. And that's been the success that Bevert, Kazema and their peers have achieved so far, that's been supported by themselves intrinsically with the behaviours that we look to assess the recruitment process, but the placement and the job being accessible. However, when it's come to placement 2, we've had a much more richer dialogue with everyone involved. And while we always said to recruits, you can't pick your placement, we've asked them to give us an input. So we got all of them to present to each other in short online sessions in, I think it was June. And then in early July, I had a one-to-one with all of them saying, if you could express a preference for what you heard from your peers, what would you look to do? So we took that information to account. Some organisations may have changed where their second place would be to the first one. So I looked at a lot more depth of trying to allocate people to placement 2 than I had available in placement 1. But the key thing of the programme, we've got to be open to the fact that there are organisations who may not have been able to support the programme, but would have fantastic jobs for the recruits after the programme. And therefore, it's been tricky to have a perfect match. But I think the second match, and Kazema and Bebert are hopefully going to agree, but they'll probably need to get into their placements before they can credibly agree that there's been a bit more nuancing, and therefore, I wouldn't say matching, but a bit more multi-layering of matching people to their second placement than we did for the first. The other thing, and that does link to the question about location, you can't underestimate how important it is for someone to be able to get to work effectively, easily, and affordably when the salaries we're offering are there, but they're not big salaries, and we're not formally offering or asking hosts to subsidise commuting, and that is always going to be a factor to take into account as well.
Yeah, of course. I think, yeah, exactly. I imagine that the host organisations you've got are the question was triggered really from like the interest that you've got, you know, private sector, like planning consultancies, management consultancies, all the way through to like housing associations, London boroughs. Like it's quite a range. And obviously then the roles that potentially are on offer are so vast as well, I imagine. So that's, yeah, I wondered if there was matching, but it sounds, I can understand obviously the second placement, you've got a bit more time and info and it makes sense, but no, it sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I can't see if there are any other questions on the chat. If anyone's happy to come off mute and just call out, please go ahead. Okay. I think I am conscious that we are literally 1 minute away from the scheduled end of the call, so we're keen in future London style to keep the time effectively. So before I close the call, I just want to say firstly thank you to everyone who's joined and taken the time to register and come to call, but huge thank you to Patrick, Bebert and Kazema, you know, sort of the key stakeholders of the programme. Hearing from them makes it a lot more credible, and huge thank you to Nicola and Tara for their support. I'll be sharing the slides with everyone after the call. If anyone does want the recording, more than happy to sort of go through WeTransfer, I guess, or other platforms to get the large file to you. Thank you very much for your engagement, and you know, I'll be in touch. Hopefully, get more of you to sign up to Cohort 2. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.